Welcome, everyone, to an extra spooky Halloween edition of the On Iowa Politics podcast. This week, you'll scream in terror as we discuss Randy Feenstra finally making his gubernatorial campaign official. You'll gasp with horror as we explore readers' questions about how elections officials catch fraudulent voting. And you'll cower in fright as we take a look ahead to next week's local elections. Hey, everyone, I'm evil Erin Murphy, the Des Moines bureau chief for the Gazette in Cedar Rapids. As I introduce everyone this week for our Halloween episode, I'd like to hear two things from everyone. Your favorite Halloween candy and your favorite past Halloween costume. I'll go first, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups and Indiana Jones, which I know is lame, but I love the character and I had fun doing it. All right. With me this week, our Gazette Deputy Bureau Chief, terrifying Tom Barton. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Erin. I am going to say Kit Kat Bar and Optimus Prime.
Ooh, big 80s and 90s kid here, so Optimus Prime's a good one. Lead Des Moines Bureau Chief Macabre Maya Marchel Hoff is here. Hello, Maya.
Ooh, Erin. 100 Grand Bar and probably my costume from this year. I'm Danny from Midsummer, and I made a pretty epic flower crown, so
nice.
Kind of proud of it.
Nice. All right. Spooky Sarah Watson of the Quad City Times is here. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Erin. My favorite candy is a Snickers, and this year for a local zombie-themed 5K, my husband and I resurrected the old Iowa license plates, and he used Photoshop to make them say zombies and brains.
Nice. And I think for those of us watching on YouTube, Bailey is trying to put that up on the screen right now. So also with us is Jared O'Lantern McNett of the Sioux City Journal. Hello, Jared.
Greetings, Erin. Favorite candy? This is maybe a trendy pick, but Nerds Clusters is like a perfect candy. You've got crunch. You've got a nice chewy texture as well. Bailey is agreeing in the chat. Favorite costume? More than a few years back, I was Kurt Cobain. So I had a flannel shirt, a Bane mask, and then a Kurt Cobain type wig. I was very proud of that particular one.
That's solid. That's solid work right there. All right. Also with us is Gazette columnist Abominable Althea Cole. Hello, Althea.
Hello. I was kind of wondering what term you were going to pick for me, and I love abominable. That is excellent. My mother made me a witch costume when I was in kindergarten, and I wore that multiple years in a row. And she gave me a thing of green eyeshadow that I would just rub all over my face to, look like the Wicked Witch of the West. And my brother was like 2 years old the first time I ever did that, and it scared the hell out of him, which is why to this day it's my favorite costume ever. I mean, we could be here all day if we determine my favorite candy, but I will say it's early voting season right now. I work for elections part-time, and we always bring in candy for the election workers. And I brought a big variety pack of candy, and it seems that all of the little tiny boxes of Milk Duds were missing before the candy actually made it to the elections department. So apparently, just by process of elimination, I love the little tiny boxes of Milk Duds.
There you go. I used to love Milk Duds. And then I did one of those things where I ate too much of a good thing and now I can't stand them. But that's because
usually it's dental work that kind of cures people of their love for Milk Duds. But luckily my teeth are still in okay shape.
What is it in those in particular that makes them just the worst when it comes to your teeth?
I think we should make a dark chocolate caramel, like salted caramel Milk Dud, and I don't know. They stick to the teeth. That's what makes them absolutely terrible. But if the old people aren't going to eat them, I would be happy to clean up the mess.
All right, and rounding out the roster is Gazette columnist Terrible Todd Dorman. Hello, Todd.
Hello, and it's Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, nothing even close. And a few years ago, I wore a dark blue sweatshirt with the word "before" on it. Like a picture before and after. I was the large guy. I was the before picture.
Outstanding. And producer extraordinaire Bailey Cheon told me before we went on the air here that their favorite is Almond Joys, which is
Hmm.
objectively a terrible choice. I'm sorry, Bailey. Facts are facts, but you're still the best producer in the world. So
No,
feel
chocolate and coconut is a good. It's a good
Yeah.
combo.
come on.
And this is the only time of year that you really see them. You know, they're in the
Yeah.
they're in the candy packs. I mean, it's
That
kind
and
of a-
candy corn, right?
so yeah. Well, candy corn. Yeah.
By the way, real quick aside, if you ever get a chance to see Lewis Black's bit on candy corn, please do look it up. You'll thank yourself and me.
I genuinely love candy corn. It's
Really?
not a put on. I'm a huge candy corn fan.
That's fascinating. I think you should talk to your therapist about that, Jared.
It's
All right.
easier to just drink Caro corn syrup from a bottle, I think. But if you need it to be orange and yellow, that's fine.
All right, let's get down to business. We're going to start on the campaign trail this week, where Western Iowa Congressman Randy Feenstra finally made officially official what we've all pretty much known for multiple months now, which is that he's running for governor. Feenstra announced way back in May that he was exploring a run for governor, and he's effectively been in full campaign mode ever since. On Tuesday, he finally made it official and announced his formal gubernatorial campaign. We had a couple folks that wrote about this. Jared, as our resident Western Iowa reporter, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit more, refresh our memories from May about who Randy Feenstra is and where he fits in this competitive Republican primary for Iowa governor.
Well, funnily enough, Aaron, one of his previous jobs was the former head of sales at the Foreign Candy Company in Hull. So there you go. A nice little Halloween tie-in right off the top.
Well done.
And for folks who don't know, like Foreign Candy Company were the ones responsible for bringing warheads to America. So that's a interesting little note with that particular company.
And to clarify for Jared listeners, he's talking about the candy warheads.
Yes.
Not the nuclear versions.
Yes. Yeah, so that was one of his former jobs. He taught business classes at Dort, which is the Christian Reformed Church University in Sioux Center. He was the whole city administrator for a number of years. He was the Sioux County treasurer for a little while. He was state senator for 12 years up through when he finally ran for the 4th district in 2020. So kind of a steady sort of climb up the kind of political ladder in the state, going from like the city level to county to state and then congressional, now trying to run for governor. As far as a fit in the primary, obviously he's the highest profile office holder of anyone that is declared or running. He's going to be the most capable of raising a lot of money and already has before he was even officially in the race. I remember over the summer it was like $3 million. His campaign had said they had already raised
3.2.
Yeah, 3.2. And of course, as we've talked about plenty of times, he's going to be coming out of the most conservative district in the state as the congressperson, which certainly can't hurt in a primary in particular. And even more in terms of fit, I don't know that he'll be able to claim like the farthest right lane in the primary. Like Tom and Erin, you guys, or Maya, you would know better, but that seems more like it would be Sherman or Steen than it would be Randy Feenstra. You guys are shaking your head. Okay,
yes, that's absolutely. I think you're spot on.
Yeah, and I mean this kind of overlaps with Tom some too. But you know, the ad that he had on Tuesday that had some culture war stuff in it, particularly the keeping men out of women's sports. But then when I talked with him, it was more he was really sticking to education and business. And then Tom, I don't know if he said this to you repeatedly, but he talked about taking Iowa to new heights. That was something that came up. Yep, Tom's shaking his head again. Good. Yeah, new heights was the thing that came up at least 5 or 6 times in the 5 minutes that I talked with him on Tuesday.
Yeah, it sounds like he's already disciplined and on message. Tom, as Jared said, you also talked to Congressman / gubernatorial candidate Feenstra here on his announcement day. Did he say anything else beyond what we've already covered?
He did, but just as Jared said, he really leaned into this message of taking Iowa to new heights. A play off of his 6 foot something frame. But he did lay out 4 main goals he said will define his platform. First, he said he wants to lower and then freeze property taxes, which he framed as key to making Iowa more business friendly and attracting investment. Second, he talked about ensuring what he called world-class education from preschool through college. Third, he emphasized career and trade training, trying to keep more young Iowans here rather than losing them to jobs in other states. And his fourth piece was healthcare access, particularly maternity care in rural areas. He told me that he wants to make sure that women have the ability to have maternity care that's within reasonable driving distance, within like 20 minutes. And he tied that to the federal legislation that helped write in Congress what Republicans dubbed the One Big Beautiful Bill. Feenstra serves on the Tax Writing and Powerful House Ways and Means Committee. He also serves on the Agriculture Committee, so he was involved in drafting tax and ag-related provisions included in that sweeping tax cut and spending bill. He described that, and then he also, as part of that, described what he said, as a major investment in rural Iowa, pointing to a $50 billion fund for rural hospitals that Republicans included in that legislation. Now, Democrats and health policy experts say that that's misleading, that the bill actually cuts billions from Medicaid and SNAP, and that that rural hospital fund doesn't come close to offsetting those cuts. But Feenstra is clearly trying to use it to highlight his record on tax cuts and rural investment, and to link himself tightly to President Trump and the America First agenda. He also made it clear that he wants this to be a campaign about Iowa values, small town values, and work ethic. He talked about his roots in Hull, where he met his wife working at a pizza ranch, and said that he plans to, campaign all across the state. Overall, it was a message that kind of blends his conservative credentials, again, with a focus on kind of his small town Iowa identity. And then he's already signaling that he intends to make Rob Sand his main foil in this race. So in his campaign launch video, he calls out Sand as a radical liberal and says that, essentially don't be fooled, by Sand's campaign message of him trying to paint himself as an independent, that's misleading. And so I think it was interesting that, right out of the bat, Feenstra and Republicans are already kind of starting to zero in on Rob Sand and kind of attack him again as kind of this main foil in the race.
So, Tom, I asked him about the fact that the only other person that comes up in his ad besides himself was Rob Sand. And the thing I asked was, that's the only one that comes up in the ad. Is that who you all consider the person to beat, whether it be in the primary or in the general? And he did not really respond to that. He just kind of attacked Rob Sand again and said, I want to make sure that this state continues to grow and take it to new heights. So I thought that was interesting that, they're going after Sand in the ad and making it clear that they think that's the person to beat, but they don't really want to, hit the other people in the primary too hard. I was a little surprised by that when I was talking to him.
Interesting. Tom, you also mentioned something I wanted to circle back on, or maybe it was Jared. Forgive me now, I can't remember. But talking about height, Randy Feenstra is literally 6'6", 6'7".
Yeah, I was trying to see if I could come up with that off the top of my head, and I couldn't. I just know that he's 6'6" something, but
yeah. For those of you who don't know him, yeah, he and look, if this becomes, and I'm not assuming anything here, but if this election becomes Randy Feenstra against Rob Sand, I haven't done the legwork on this yet, but we've got to be setting a record for average height of gubernatorial candidates in Iowa history here, because Rob's not 6'7", but he's at least, he's taller than me, and I'm a hair below 6'2". So
if I ever had a lot of time to waste, I would actually want to go back and see if when Feenstra ran against J.D. Scholten, if that was the
Yes.
tallest
That's right.
election ever, because J.D. is also obviously very, very
Right.
tall.
Right.
And it was really
God, how
funny
did
that
I
they
not
were
think
running
of that?
against each other in 2020.
That's literally 2 6'6" plus guys
Yeah.
right there campaigning against each other.
Oh, sorry. Apparently he's
No, go-
6'5".
we go.
Feenstra?
Yeah, according.
I'm calling
Yeah.
shenanigans on that. He's at
So-
least 6'6". I'm going to ask him that next time I talk to him. Sorry, go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, there was another thing I kind of asked about too, especially since he was leaning so much on the taking the state to new heights. I asked him, like, for somebody that's considering voting for you, whether it be in the primary or in the general, how would you be a continuation of Governor Reynolds, and how would you differ from Governor Reynolds? And that was another thing that he kind of demurred on, and just sort of said that he appreciates her time in office and that he wants to take the state to new heights.
That was the very first question I asked him, and it was the same question, and he did the same thing.
Outstanding. Media groupthink at its best or worst. I'm not sure which there, but that's interesting.
According to his ad, he is 6'5", like an ad called
Really?
New Heights.
All right. Okay, we'll take. I'll have to believe it. If it's in the ad, then that's pretty safe. That's a good source. All right, Todd. We know he's 6'5" now. We got that out of the way. Let me ask you. As Jared said, he becomes pretty safe to say the most recognizable name in the Republican field of gubernatorial candidates here. But I presume that he'll still have some work to do introducing himself to voters outside of Western Iowa. Do you think he's the quote unquote presumed front runner at this point, or is that are there some gaps for him to still fill in?
Well, by the way, I'm Todd and I'm 5'10", so just to get that out of the way, I think if you went out and bought a big handle of bourbon, which I recommend before every election cycle, and you drank each time the Feenstra campaign makes a reference to being tall, you're going to be in a gutter, just completely soused every day, which will make the race look a lot more interesting than it maybe will be in reality. Yeah, he's clearly the front runner. He's going to have the money. He's a sitting congressman. Which is a double-edged sword, because yes, he's been a political name because he's in Congress, but also can be associated with Congress, which is usually not the most popular institution in America. Although I haven't checked the approval ratings lately. There was a poll out. I don't know if any of you saw it. The A to Z Research. Have you ever heard of this outfit?
No.
Z to A. Research. Yeah.
Okay.
And they've got Sand 45, Feenstra 43. So take that with whatever bourbon you have left. So it's, I think that's going to be the race. It's going to be Feenstra and Sand. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves. Because, I mean, Sand, as we've talked about before, it's pretty remarkable that Republicans sort of let him go out there for 2 or 3 months and do 100 town hall meetings and really never landed a punch on him while he was doing that and introducing himself to a lot of voters and getting written up in a lot of local newspapers. Feenstra waiting is sort of what fed that. But so they've got a little bit. I mean, Republicans are obviously confident. I mean, they win everything, but sometimes you can be a little too confident, I guess.
I think that's such an interesting point you raised there, Todd, because we talk about every cycle in certain types of elections, and especially involving candidates who maybe aren't as well known among a wide electorate, about the importance of defining yourself before the opponent gets a chance to define you. And look, I'm not saying what's going to come 13 months, no, not even that, almost 12 months from now, but at the very least, at this ridiculously early stage, you got to say that, to your point, Rob Sand has protected himself from that to a certain degree. I mean, look, the attack ads are still going to come, and there's still an opportunity for that. But to your point, man, he has spent a lot of time already campaigning in this election and not facing the pushback that he will next year. But he got out in front of that, I think, is the point.
Well, and I asked him about that today. I talked to him, and he basically just said, I've won 2 elections already. I'd already defined myself. And I said, well, but that was for state auditor. I mean, I don't know how people look into the nominees for state auditor compared to the governor, which I told him was the big enchilada. And he didn't take the bait, give me his recipe or anything. But yeah, so he did win 2 statewide elections, and maybe someday Republicans will look back and maybe longingly and think of Todd. What was his name? The auditor candidate, Todd Halber, who Sand only beat by 2,800 votes. And what if they backed him? What if they invited him on the bus tour? They could have.
I thought you were referring to yourself. I thought you were.
I was in the same spot. I was like, where is he going with this?
I thought, oh no, Todd is having a senior moment and he can't remember his name.
There are very few Todds that have risen to any sort of prominence, and it's usually for bad reasons. It's usually just bad. So it's just Todd Halber and I, and you. We almost had a Todd run for governor. What was his name? The lawmaker from Charles City.
Oh yeah. Oh shoot.
Yeah, I can't think of
Pritchard.
Todd Pritchard.
Yep.
We almost. So yeah, I'm sorry about that, but yeah, he's the guy they didn't help, and probably could have rid them of Rob Sand before any of this. But they're being smart so far. I don't know how smart they'll be going forward, but I think his campaign has done a pretty good job of using that extra time to establish themselves before Republicans start to call him a radical socialist.
I just have to say that if anybody does a drinking game during this election cycle, whether it be how many times Randy Feenstra refers to his height, or how many times Rob Sand leads his audience in singing America the Beautiful, whatever it is,
that'd be 100 shots.
If you absolutely get, as Todd called it, soused on the bourbon or any other, whatever your liquor is of choice, make sure you sober up before you go to the polling place, because that's going to make it really hard to fill out your ballot. And as an election worker, my training includes the fact that, yes, people are allowed to receive assistance in filling out their ballots if they're willing to fill out an affidavit saying they need assistance. But my training does include the fact that intoxication is not a valid reason to seek assistance. So please, I can't believe I'm saying this, but please don't go into your polling place drunk.
Back in the day, like the local party bosses used to do that. They would get people really drunk and then get them to vote at like 5 different like polling places. That was a thing in a lot of big cities back in the day.
And apparently that's what happened to Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah. That's supposedly how he died.
Yeah, he was found dead, and he had been taken by some party machine all over the place and voted multiple times, and they gave him liquor.
Voting is a serious problem.
Both the Dorman, nevermore.
Oh boy. All right.
I have one other thing I was
Jared.
kind of thinking about with this. If the matchup is what we're kind of talking about it being Randy Feenstra and Rob Sand, and this I guess is a little bit of a like Northwest Iowa lens, but stuff with the carbon capture pipeline is going to flare up at least once or twice more before the general election next year. And it's interesting then that those are going to be the 2 guys running against each other, because neither one of them can really capitalize on that the way other candidates on either side of the aisle could, because Rob Sand hasn't necessarily been like a fire breather about it, and neither has Randy Feenstra. They both have kind of said the basic thing of, like property rights are important and this and that, but neither one of them has been like really out on front on something like that does matter to a lot of people.
Absolutely a great point. That's going to be fascinating to play out in both the primary and the general. Let's get moving along here. And for those of you watching on YouTube, by the way, if you see our Sarah Watson disappear in a little bit here, it's not because the zombies took her. Or is it? It's because she had other duties. So let's get to the block that I wanted to bring Sarah in. We're talking about a 2026 election right now, but Folks should know, if you don't already, that this coming Thursday is an election day in Iowa also. It's the state's 2025 city and school elections this coming Thursday, November 6th. We here on the On Iowa Politics podcast obviously pay a lot of attention to those state and federal elections, like we just did, because it's our job. But local elections are just as important. I tell you unequivocally, and one could argue they're even more important. So in that spirit, let's talk to a couple of our reporters about some of the local elections in their coverage areas. Sarah, I'm just interested to hear. Give us an interesting election or two happen in the Quad Cities that folks are going to be voting on next week.
Yeah, probably the most interesting or the most watched race is going to be for Davenport mayor. So Davenport's the third largest city in Iowa, and we've got two candidates. Both are former council members. One is Jason Gordon. He's a former at-large alderman for Davenport and has been very involved with economic development in Davenport in the last 15 years as the chair of a nonprofit board that owns some land north of Davenport that has been the city's main industrial park. And so big employers like Kraft Heinz and Amazon and Fair Oaks Foods. He's been involved in those decisions to ready those sites and attract large employers. And so he has really kind of positioned himself as a pro-economic development candidate. Davenport is looking to expand its industrial sites out west. And so he's kind of positioned himself as like, I'm the person who can, position the city for attracting some more of these large employers. And then we've got Judith Lee. She is a former ward representative in 8th Ward. And she has really made this election about transparency. So I think listeners will probably remember a couple years ago, there was, the collapse of 324 Main Street and settlements with the city's former administrator in lieu of she threatened to bring a harassment lawsuit against the city for allegations of harassment she said she experienced at the hands of elected officials. And so Judith Lee was on council at that time and she says was kind of excluded from some of those decisions, or at least kept in the dark for parts of it. And since she's left council, has been very opposed to how the city has handled those settlements, including testifying in court, that she didn't feel like as an alderman she had enough of a voice on council with those settlements, and has said that she wants to make sure that the city is open and transparent with all of its city decisions. I should also add, I guess, that Judith Lee was also one of those named as one of those one of those elected officials that had been causing the harassment, which she denies. So that is the state of the race. I would say those are kind of the candidates that and the pitches that they're making. One is really about moving Davenport forward and talking about economic development as his key priorities, and the other candidate is really all about transparency and bringing a more open process to the city of Davenport's governing.
Gosh, that's so fascinating as a detached observer to hear that still has ripple effects into the mayor's race there now with the whole issue. Thanks for that, Sarah. That's super interesting. We'll have to circle back next week and see how it went. Jared, how about over in Western Iowa? What's going on over there?
Well, there's a spate of bond issues, as there always is in these local elections, and a few of them are ones that have been defeated over and over and over and over again. So that's one of those things where it's always just interesting to see if any of those finally kind of get over the hurdle. And then we have 3 seats that are up on the city council. And what's interesting is the seats that are up, none of those, the people that currently hold those, decided to run for re-election. They all kind of backed out of running. And we have, 6 total people running for Sioux City Council for 3 seats. And I guess the thing that I'll be interested in, even though I'm not going to be watching this race as closely as our city reporter Dolly Butts will be, but Two of the candidates are Rick Bertrand, who's a former state legislator that people might know, and Paul Koskovich. They're both local developers. And then another candidate that's in the race, John Dinbesti, is a financial advisor. And I'll be interested to see if ultimately the three of them, particularly Mr. Koskovich and Mr. Bertrand, that end up winning, because like developers getting in more than one of them in the election cycle maybe signals a little bit the kind of mood that the voters are in terms of what they want to see the city focusing on. So that's kind of the angle, I think, in particular that I've been interested in when it comes to the race here in Sioux City for council seats.
That is kind of fascinating. So, and forgive me if I missed this, Jared, but are you saying like is housing considered an important issue? Is that what you mean by that? Or
yeah, that is definitely part of it. Although, and like they've obviously talked about that, but they have also kind of talked about it, a little bit from their own kind of perspective, and have done plenty of complaining about like the permitting process of the city,
sure. Okay.
and some of that stuff too. But yeah, no, it also would maybe be a little bit of a signal when it comes to development in the city in terms of the mood that people in town are in.
Yeah, fascinating. All right, good stuff. And again, we'll come back to that next week. So speaking of these local elections and elections in general, the latest edition of the Gazette's Curious Iowa feature, compiled by our podcast producer extraordinaire Bailey Cheon, answered a series of readers' questions about elections, and in particular, how local and state elections officials work to catch attempted fraudulent voting. It's definitely worth checking out that latest Curious Iowa. So if you haven't already, find your way to it. And along those lines, as Althea mentioned earlier, Althea has volunteered in the past to serve as a poll worker on election days. And Althea, you have a pretty incredible anecdote to share that sort of marries these different topics together. I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, so first, I'm actually going to correct you, Erin, on one thing. Election workers are not volunteers. We are paid.
Oh, thank you. That's right.
And most people, they don't necessarily realize this until it's pointed out to them, but you want your election workers to be paid. You don't want volunteers. Paying election workers allows there to be expectations beyond just, hey, thanks for showing up. Paying us allows you to expect that we do a really good job and that your vote is going to count, and that you're not going to have to go through all these extra steps. So what I always tell people is that we're paid, but we know we're a part of something special because we really, really are. So that being said, an anecdote, there was a recent charge of election misconduct in Lynn County. Before I go any further, I will say that even though I am a temporary, brought in through a temporary agency to do election services for early voting, I'm speaking on my own behalf here. So nothing I'm saying is on behalf of any county that employs me, which in this case is Lynn County. I'm speaking from my own personal experience here. So there was a recent charge of election misconduct placed against a Marion man. The charge was actually filed back in April for voting that happened on October 30th, 2024. So for the 2024 election. He was only recently arrested because he did not show up for his court appearance. And after that, a warrant was issued. And so he was finally arrested in mid-October, actually just as early voting was beginning for the 2025 city and school board elections. So the accusation is that the Marion man voted early on October 30th, 2024 at Lyndale Mall, and registered to vote using an address at which he had not lived for several years. Now, what's very interesting about this to me is the fact that when I read about this story, I immediately looked at my work calendar and realized that I was on duty that day. So this bizarrely could have theoretically happened under my nose or the nose of my colleagues. It definitely did.
All right, that's fascinating stuff. We covered that story when it happened. Look for that link in the episode description. Find it at thegazette.com. And obviously a story we'll be keeping an eye on down the road. There's a preliminary hearing scheduled for that case for November 6th. So one we'll keep an eye out for. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Make sure to come back and join us again next week if you're not already. Please subscribe to us on your streaming service of choice or at YouTube, where you should also smash that like button. You can also find the podcast each week on your preferred Gazette or Lee newspaper website. Now that you've listened to the On Iowa Politics podcast, make sure you're also subscribed to the On Iowa Politics newsletter, where every morning in your inbox, you'll receive all the latest politics and government coverage from our team. You can subscribe to that free newsletter at the Gazette's website, thegazette.com. And lastly, don't forget that the work of everyone you heard here today can be found on the pages and websites of the Quivering Quad City Times, the monstrous Muscatine Journal, the Cedar Rapids Ghoulish Gazette, the Wailing Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier, the menacing Mason City Globe Gazette, the cursed Council Bluffs Daily Nonpareil, and the spine-chilling Sioux City Journal. By the way, I should, for those of you listening to the streamer, you missed out. Go find the YouTube version too this week, because Jared made a special Halloween appearance, and so did I, kind of, but Jared's is much better. For Tom Barton, Maya Marchel, Hoff, Sarah Watson, Jared McNett, Althea Cole, Todd Dorman, and our producer, blood-curdling Bailey Cheehan, I'm Erin Murphy. Be well, everyone. Be good, and of course, happy Halloween.